Have you ever sent a text message and then immediately went back to read it? Once, twice, maybe 5 times? Analyzing every word, every punctuation mark. Wondering if you sounded too eager, too cold, too weird. Did that period make you seem angry? Was that emoji too much? Should you have said it differently? And even after you've read it 10 times, you still can't shake the feeling that something's off. So what's really happening here? Why do some people obsessively reread their own messages while others hit send and never look back? Is it perfectionism, insecurity, or something deeper in your psychology? Stick with me because what you're about to learn might finally explain why you can't stop analyzing words that have already been sent. For some people, this behavior comes from something psychologists call hypervigilance around social perception. They grew up in environments where words mattered, where saying the wrong thing had consequences. Maybe a parent who overreacted to tone. Maybe a friendship that ended over a misunderstanding. Maybe a pattern of being misinterpreted or judged. So their brain learned to monitor communication obsessively. Now, even a simple text becomes high stakes. They read their messages not because they're vain, but because they're scanning for anything that could be misunderstood, anything that could trigger rejection or conflict. Studies show that people with rejection sensitivity have heightened emotional responses to perceived social threats, including their own communication. For this group, reading texts isn't about perfectionism. It's about protection. They're trying to prevent pain before it happens. Then there's a second type, the overthinkers. These are people who struggle with something psychologists call rumination, the tendency to replay thoughts and actions over and over, searching for flaws. When they send a text, their brain doesn't move on. It stays stuck, analyzing whether they came across right, whether the other person will respond positively, whether they said too much or too little. Rereading the message becomes a compulsion, a way to try to control the uncontrollable. But here's the problem. The more they reread, the weirder everything looks. Psychologists call this semantic satiation, when you repeat a word or phrase so much that it loses meaning and starts to feel strange. That perfectly normal text suddenly seems awkward, cold, confusing, and the anxiety spirals. For them, rereading isn't helping, it's feeding the loop. They're not finding clarity. They're creating doubt. And then there's the third group. The people who reread their messages because they're deeply self-aware and want to communicate authentically. This isn't anxiety. It's conscientiousness. They care about how their words land. They want to make sure they express themselves clearly, that their tone matched their intention, that they honored the relationship with thoughtful communication. Psychologists link this to high emotional intelligence, the ability to understand and manage both your own emotions and others. For this group, rereading is a form of quality control. Not because they're afraid of judgment, but because they value connection. The difference? When they reread and see something they'd change, they learn from it for next time. They don't spiral, they adjust and move forward. For them, reading texts is a tool for growth, not a trap of anxiety. But here's what all three types share. They're all deeply aware of the gap between intention and perception. They know that what you mean and what someone hears aren't always the same. And in a world where so much communication happens through text, where tone is lost and context is missing, that gap feels enormous. So they reread, trying to bridge it. Here's the truth most people won't tell you. Text messages are terrible vessels for emotional nuance. They're flat, they're limited. They lack the warmth of a voice, the context of body language, the immediacy of real-time feedback. So if you're someone who obsessively reads your texts, you're not broken. You're just hyper-aware of how much gets lost in translation. The question is, are you using that awareness constructively, or is it trapping you in cycles of doubt? Because here's what helps. Understanding that most people aren't analyzing your messages the way you are. They read them once, maybe twice, and move on. That period you agonized over, they didn't even notice. That emoji you debated, they thought it was nice. Your anxiety is filling in gaps that don't exist. So if you're someone who rereads your own texts obsessively, ask yourself this. Are you protecting yourself, or are you punishing yourself? Because one is wisdom, the other is suffering. And your words deserve to be sent with confidence, not dread. So here's the real question. Are you communicating or are you catastrophizing? If this hit close to home, hit subscribe. We explore the psychology behind the small behaviors that reveal so much about how you think. And if this resonated, you need to watch our previous video on the psychology of needing background noise to think clearly. It explores how your brain creates the conditions it needs to function best. Link is on the screen now. Let's stop spiraling over sent messages and start trusting ourselves together.